But can we really boil down all struggle to class struggle? What about racism, sexism, or homophobia? The point is, Marx didn't consider different kinds of discrimination and identity perspectives in his theories.
First of all, is that true? Did Marx not comment on the oppression of any layer of society other than the working class? And two, is that a justifiable criticism of Marxism, that we don't take sufficient account of the many different ways that people can be oppressed, and we're only interested in the working class?
To answer the first question, no, it's not true, actually. Marx did write about other forms of oppression. He lived through the American Civil War, and he enthusiastically supported the cause of the abolition of slavery. And he wrote around that time that labour, meaning workers in a white skin, can never be free as long as labour in a black skin is branded, referring to the slaves. He also talked about oppression within the family. Marx and Engels, his close friend and collaborator, were very much aware of the oppression that women faced and face in society and in the family.
Well, Engels wrote probably the definitive text on the question, The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State, which shows where the oppression of women comes from and how it's linked to the emergence of class society and in turn to the emergence of the state.
Yeah, and he didn't say, oh, it doesn't matter or it's identical with class. What Engels explained in that work is that the oppression of women, the position of women as almost in slave-like conditions in many societies, as being the property of men or being second-class citizens, is something that arises along with the division of society into classes. He's not saying that the oppression of women is identical to the exploitation of the working class or exploitation of other classes in ancient forms of society. But he's saying that those two are actually bound up with each other, bound up with private property, bound up with class exploitation and oppression. The thing that I find extremely inspiring about that Marxist analysis of the oppression of women is it identifies that it has an origin and therefore it has an end. Again, dialectically, something that so many people take to be just an inherent part of human life. That men are on average larger and more aggressive, and therefore they dominate women in one way or another. That is something that we can never escape from, basically. That is an idea challenged by Marxist materialist analysis, and actually Marxism points to a way in which men and women can be truly equal. Marx identifies the struggle of the working class for its emancipation as the key driving force for the emancipation of all of humanity. The racism, the oppression, the violence against women, the position of women in the home, all of these different forms of oppression that are regularly talked about in politics, these are linked to the mode of production that we live under. They're linked to a system. It's not just nasty people do nasty things. It is that these things play a role in the social system that we live under. If we are going to eradicate these things, then we have to get rid of capitalism. So the next question is, how do we get rid of capitalism? That's why Marx focuses on class. That's why we focus on class, and that's why it's absolutely right to focus on class. It's not to ignore or say, oh, don't worry about your oppression. You basically just shut up and wait for the workers to carry it out. The point is that the only force on earth that can overthrow the capitalist system is the working class. Therefore, the utmost unity, the highest level of class consciousness, and the revolutionary struggle of the working class to seize power and transform society is fundamental. It is the most important thing if we really want to solve these problems.